A lot of conversation this week regarding the NIL status of student athletes, as well as transfer portal and how it impacts athletes. I'm going to talk with two guys who have intimate knowledge of this because they were student athletes until just recently at BYU.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, a resident BYU insider. Thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. I always appreciate you guys making it a part of your routine, no matter when you're listening to it and or watching it on YouTube. Thank you for being an everydayer with us here. I am pleased to welcome in two recently graduated BYU football players. First off, Alema Pilimai. I don't even know how to describe you, Alema, because you played like 5 different positions at BYU. So I'm just going to say BYU player Alema Pilimai, and then also former BYU linebacker Jackson Kaufusi. Gentlemen, thank you for taking the time.
Of course. Thanks for having us, Jake.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So you and we were going back and forth on Twitter a little bit. There's been some conversation you guys have been having on social media with regards to NIL and how the transfer portal affects student athletes. You guys are part of this generation that has had the name, image, and likeness opportunities. The transfer portal has been part of your guys' career, at least to a part of it. So I'm going to start off with you, Alema, because you were the most vocal on social media. I'm going to start off with you. Why did you feel so passionately about discussing this, and obviously, and going out on social media and having that conversation?
Yeah, I feel like the narrative that was kind of being portrayed on social media is that a lot of the decision to enter the transfer portal is solely based on money and NIL status, And for me, I kind of understand the more nuanced decision-making that goes into wanting to leave a school, and it's much more than just money.
Now, Jackson, you also said, hey, I'd like to hop on, and we were talking about doing this. What's your perception of how everything's being portrayed right now? Is it similar to what Alema just said?
Yeah, I mean, you never know what's going to go on. I mean, some people have dreams and aspirations to play in the NFL, and you can do that at BYU, of course, as we've seen. But some people may feel that the best choice is to go elsewhere, a new scenery, new setting for them. Might be into decision, family, whatever it is. There's a lot of different things that play into that factor as well.
Now, you guys have had teammates leave the program. You've had guys transfer into the program during your time at BYU. You talk about the fact that there are so many different decisions that go into making that type of a decision. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but bear with me for a moment here. So I'll lob this one to you, Alema. When it comes to your career at BYU, you had so many position changes during your time. Was there any point or points during your time at BYU where you did consider potentially leaving?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, ultimately it just came down to me thinking about my football career, what I wanted to accomplish, there was a little bit of the NIL side kind of playing into it where, we have bills that we got to pay, and so for the longest time, my wife was kind of the one supporting me financially. And so I'm always grateful to her for that. But yeah, there was definitely times when I'd considered it just because I wanted to pursue maybe a place that might have given me a better opportunity to play, but also helping me to support myself financially.
Now, Jackson, you've got a very famous last name amongst BYU fans. The Kaufusi name resonates with people. You've had cousins play in the NFL. You've had your dad, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, made it to the pro level. Your older brother, obviously. You have a younger brother currently at BYU. What did you ever consider potentially making a move?
Me personally, no. I saw Devin leave, and that was kind of like, dang, like that sucks because we want to keep the legacy at BYU. Me personally, I didn't have any aspirations to make money elsewhere or go anywhere else. I just wanted to make the family proud and kind of leave my own mark on BYU football. So.
Now, I'm going to lob this question to both of you. I'll have you answer first, Lemon, and I'll have you answer it, Jackson. With regards to NIL, during your time at BYU, I think there are people out there thinking the guys are making money hand over fist. Can you give us an idea of how NIL went for both of you? For both of you, I guess is what I should say.
Sure. So, I mean, from my perspective, BYU does have a lot to offer in terms of NIL. I mean, look at the Built Barr contract that we had. Obviously they paid for a huge chunk of my tuition after I had gotten taken off a scholarship. So, Nick Greer and Built Barr, like, you guys are awesome. I really appreciate them, and that's just kind of like one of the many things that BYU can provide. Now, at the same time, it's not going to be the same as it is at other schools. There's not like we're signing these huge contracts with players, at least not publicly. So it's a little bit different at BYU, where you're coming here more for the experience and for the education. And of course, there's going to be some things on the side that are going to help you to support yourself, but it's not nearly as big as it's going to be at some of these other schools.
Your thoughts, Jackson?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Alema. I think when the NIL first happened, we all thought we were getting paid like big bucks, like, yo, we're gonna make it, we're gonna be rich. But it didn't end up happening like that. So I think, with guys coming to the school or guys, looking to leave, BYU is an experience in itself. The school, the church, it's really a place that's really different from the world. And I think, if you want to recruit guys that will stay at BYU, you're going to recruit BYU guys through and through, people who want to be there. And then, NIL just happens to be a bonus on top of that. Does it play a role in recruiting? Absolutely, I think it will. So, that's going to help as well. But for me personally, like I said, it was about legacy and family for me. I wanted to play with Isaiah and my little brother as well. So that's what it was about for me.
Spoiler alert, we're actually going to talk about Built Bar. They're actually one of our big sponsors here on the podcast. We'll talk about it here in a moment. So we'll have some fun with that, Alema. I'm excited to get your insight on that here in a moment. But one more question before we do talk about that. And it's just regarding when it comes to the perception on the outside, speaking of like from the fan perspective, I guess I should say, on the outside looking in, there are people who look at student athletes in this day and age. And I'm just going to say it up front because I hear about it all the time from listeners of mine. They perceive student athletes at times to be greedy, to be childish, to be selfish with regards to how NIL can impact a student athlete and that type of stuff. What would your retort be to that? And I'll let you start with that, Alema.
Sure. And I would say that's absolutely wrong. And in most cases, absolutely. Most of us, especially at BYU, we're husbands, and some of us are fathers. And so there's other factors that play into the decisions that we make with football and with NIL. It's not just selfish, greed and wanting to build wealth and all these things. It's more just providing for our families, But along with that, I think also like the decision to enter the transfer portal is also one of like the community that you want around you, the supporting cast, coaching staff. And so sometimes you can have differing visions for what you want for your career, and those things can oppose what the coaching staff has for the team, right? And those are just the business decisions that they have to make, and we respect them, obviously, but we demand, athletes demand that same respect in return when they make decisions that don't necessarily align with what the coach or what the fan base wants.
Anything to add on that, Jackson?
Yeah, I just think like Alema said, like, there's other factors into, decisions made and whatnot. I think that, NIL, really every college athlete, I mean, the reason why we play college football is to make it to the league. That's every little kid's dream, is to play in the NFL. And so I don't think, money is like a huge, like Alema said, it's, some of us have kids. I have a kid, my wife as well. So would it be nice to make, as much money as possible and, set my son up for, college? Like, heck yeah, I would. It's like the live golf right now, Why would you not want to play less golf and make more money, kind of thing? The same thing happens with college athletes, to some degree. So yeah, that's just my thoughts.
We'll see. As a guy who has got 2 kids of his own, I can totally commiserate with you guys. I've talked to enough of your teammates who are married and have been parents at the same time during my 10 plus years covering BYU on a day-to-day basis that there's a common refrain. You guys have already referred to it. You guys are thinking more about your family than really yourselves. And I think that gets misconstrued at times because BYU, as you mentioned, it's a different place. It's a unique institution. I went to BYU. I was a student athlete, and I got more respect for you guys in the football program or any other student athlete at BYU who is married, because you guys take on the role of full-time student, full-time athlete, and then also, hey, by the way, I'm a husband and in your case, Jackson, a father, and it's just it's a lot. You guys have to chew a lot of different things you have to deal with.
Absolutely, yeah, that's absolutely correct.
Okay, so what I want to expand upon a couple other things with regards to perception of student athletes and how your guys' life is so regimented. We'll get to that in just a moment, but we do need to talk. I already referred to it. Let's talk about Built Bar. Now, Alema, you said that you were taking off scholarships. So you were one of the Built Bar athletes who had your tuition paid for by Built Bar from the crew over there, Nick Greer and company. How important was that? You already referred to it, but how important was that for you?
Oh, life-changing. I mean, obviously, like, for normal students, they leave college with a huge amount of student debt, right? And to be able to have that paid off for me was a huge blessing in and of itself, because we left college, with very little student debt, and so that has big implications for my future as I enter the workforce. Things that I have to worry about, debt and all those things. So yeah, life-changing. Like, I'll forever be grateful to Nick Greer, and I'll always be a Built Bar customer. So.
Now, Jackson, all the BYU football players benefited from this scholarship or non-scholarship. How did it impact you?
Yeah, I mean, we received a check, because my tuition was already paid for, so we received a check. But like, I mean, Kalani mentioned it to us that he wanted to change people's lives, and he wanted to, essentially create a locker room where you don't know who's on scholarship.
Mm-hmm.
And I absolutely think that Built Bar came in and did that, where you really didn't know who was on scholarship, who wasn't, from a playing standpoint. Obviously conversations happen, but I mean, like Alema said, like to be able to graduate debt free from college is a huge blessing for him and his family. Will set him up for life. It's just a game changer. So.
Well, let me get just a quick plug in. If you guys do want to support Built Bar and what they're doing with BYU athletics and beyond, get to built.com. While you're there, use the promo code LOCKEDON15. That's LOCKEDON15. Get 15% off your order. The best part is, if you don't want to wait, you want to get your Built Bars right now, you can stop by your local Smith's and or Sam's Club. Pick them up today. I am a huge fan of Built Bars. I actually got done golfing earlier before I recorded with you guys. Got home. I ate the first thing I got home, grasshopper cookie flavor. So it's one of my personal favorites. So cannot recommend it enough. That's built.com, promo code LOCKEDON15. Enjoy the best tasting protein bars, and do it with our friends at Built Bar. Welcome back. Talking with Jackson Kaufusi as well as Alema Pilimai right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast. Thank you once again for making us your first listen today. Thank you for being an everydayer right here on Locked On Cougars. Now, gentlemen, I want to expand a little bit upon the impact of just trying to balance everything as a student athlete at BYU. You guys went through this experience. You both have recently graduated. So I should say, I guess publicly, congratulations to both of you on making it through that, getting that paper while being a student athlete. It's no small feat. I can attest to that, because I struggled doing it just as a regular student. So it's one of those crazy things. But when it comes to your guys' overall experience at BYU as a student athlete, can you just, I guess, give BYU fans an idea? And I'll start with you on this one, Jackson. Give BYU fans an idea of how hard it is to balance all the different things you have going on in your life.
Yeah, I don't even know. It's like a blur thinking back now, but I would say like the amount of work that we would put in is it's for sure like 40 to 60 plus hours, doing rehab, doing, film study, especially. I know there were nights where I definitely was like, can't be bothered watching film or doing my homework. I'd rather watch film on a team. So yeah, it's definitely tough. Like, my grades for sure took a hit. I'm not the best student at all anyways. And so, like, it's just tough to manage both football. You got to manage your coach's expectations, your teammates, the scheme, upcoming, big games, especially, going into the Big 12. I feel bad for these new guys having to manage that pressure as well. But then you also have, like, you're emailing professors, TAs, like, you're doing anything you can just to, stay above the water, I guess you could say. So.
Alema, give me your thoughts on that. I guess same thing. What was your perception? What was your experience like?
Yeah, it's exactly what Jackson said. There's just a lot of time management that has to go into being a student athlete. And I think one thing I'd like to highlight too is that, like, a lot of the things that you face at other universities, like BYU is not exempt from those things. You know what I mean? It's very similar. You know, the student athlete life is very similar in that sense, where you have to worry about education, performance on the field, and then, you know, family life, and if you're religious, you got to worry about your callings and all those things. So there's definitely a lot of things you have to manage, and I feel like sometimes people think that, you know, BYU, because it's a special place, that it's like maybe lessened or it decreases. I don't know what it is. And so like maybe our experience is much different from other student athletes, but from my conversations that I've had with friends who go to other schools, it's very similar. It's business, man. Football is work for us. Like that's how we put food on the table. It's how we get put a roof over our heads, you know? So we got to look at it like that it's a form of income for us, for those who are on scholarship. And then now with NIL, that's kind of playing a big factor too.
Absolutely. Now, you referenced it, Jackson. Obviously, the Big 12 era is coming quickly for BYU. Give me a thought. I guess I'll have both of you answer this. What are your expectations for your now former program as they get ready to go into the Power 5 ranks?
Oh man, I just hope that they can, you know, do whatever they need to do to match the level of play. The Big 12 is, I mean, that's some big boy football right there. So I think, you know, whatever the boys can do to match that level of play, and you know, I'm hoping we have a really good season and shock the world with how we play.
Now, Alema, you put out a post. This, I think it was back in like January thereabouts, saying that you plan to run it back for another year. Now, you recently put out another post saying that your time playing football is over. How much of a draw was the chance to potentially play in the Big 12 in terms of that original announcement?
Oh, huge. I mean, being able to play in a conference with such like prestige as like the Big 12 was definitely kind of, it factored into my decision to wanting to stay. And so I did workouts, and I was able to participate a little bit in spring ball, but ultimately it just came down to, you know, it kind of was a little bit too late for me. You know, this would have been my last year of eligibility, my sixth year, my sixth year, you know. We always make fun of each other, you know.
With COVID years, there's no I don't think eligibility exists anymore, honestly.
Yeah, you know, so yeah, that definitely played a factor. Just and along with the coaching staff that was coming on too, like I wish these guys came earlier in my career, just from my own personal standpoint, because I felt like that would have benefited my football career. But it didn't, and you know, played out how it played out. But I was able to kind of build a relationship with Coach Sione Boha, and I think that he's a great guy and the perfect guy for the job to manage the D line and to kind of build that Big 12 defense that we're looking for this year.
Now, both of you guys are defensive guys. Jackson, you played at linebacker. Alema, you most recently played defensive tackle. You played some defensive end. You even played linebacker and tight end at one point. Like I said, you played a myriad of positions, but both of you guys are primarily defensive guys. I want to get both your take. What has been the impact of Jay Hill so far in the program? Let's start off with you, Jackson.
Oh man, his defense is lights out. I mean, I grew up a Utah fan, and so watching Utah's defense, like it still excites me. I feel like everybody has, you know, everybody can have a highlight in a game. You know, the D line, the linebackers, safeties, corners, like it's just a lights out defense, lots of pressures. You know, you never know what you're going to get with Jay Hill's defense. And so I think it should be really exciting if they can do it correctly and have the right guys in the right spots.
Alema, you might already mention Coach Bua, but give me your thought on Coach Hill.
He's awesome. He brings a unique energy to the team, I feel like, and it was definitely a change up from the past coaching staff, you know, just in terms of philosophy as well with the defense. I mean, he's all about just messing with that quarterback's head, you know, messing with the offensive coordinator, making them second guess themselves, you know. So it's just really interesting being able to, for the small amount of time that I was there with them, like just being able to kind of pick his brain and seeing the philosophical changes that he brought to the defense and how those played out in the scrimmages that we did do. I mean, you look at the spring ball practices and the scrimmage that we had, and man, that defense is definitely looking different. You know, obviously it's not perfect, but those things are going to get polished up.
Well, I can attest to that. We as the media corps get to watch about, I'd say 20 to 30 minutes on any given day of practices. But I can say in my short snippets I saw, seemed like a market just change in overall philosophy, scheme, and that type of stuff. And I've known Coach Hill for, wow, I don't know how long, from his time at Weber State. And just for me, from my outside perception, seemed like a stand-up dude. And I could tell the energy level had absolutely been increased with him coming in. But I also wanted to extend the question out to both of you with regards to Kalani. Obviously, he was very, very close to Ilaisa Tuiaki. He's very close to all of his coaches on staff. But when it came to that change, obviously it was necessary. He made that very, very clear. He felt like he needed to make the change. But what is Coach Sitake like from a player's perspective? I'll let you answer that one first, Alema.
Yeah, he's a passionate guy, and his passion, he wears his heart on his sleeve, and so like in a lot of meetings, you can feel that from him. He's just a guy who's, he loves BYU so much, he loves the program, he loves the players, and so he wants to he wants to help them how he sees fit, and so he's going to do that to the best of his ability. So yeah, I mean, I think he's someone that brings a lot of passion and energy as well, and I think that Jay Hill, his philosophy and his mindset, from a defensive standpoint, that kind of fits with his brand of football.
Jackson, give anything to add to that? I just kind of want to get your thought, because you mentioned your last name's Kaufusi, so it's been synonymous with BYU. But what does a guy like Coach Sitake mean to you in BYU football?
Yeah, I mean, Coach Sitake, he would tell us all the time that him and Tuiaki as well. They would show up outside the games at Lavelle Edwards Stadium, and they'd wait to get in, and then they get in at halftime. You know what I mean? So to have a kid grow up and then become the coach of BYU, like, that's something special for Coach Sitake, and he coaches like that, right? He coaches like he's a BYU fan through and through. He wants the best for the program, wants the best for all of the guys, and you can just feel that in the locker room.
You guys have a fun story about that? You talk about the passion he has. Do you guys have like any quick story you can tell about that passion that might lend some insight into that?
Oh man.
Just the dancing. I think just the dancing. Like, I mean, 2020, that was probably the funnest year of football, and we had no fans. But literally every win we had, I mean, it was 11-win season. We went into the locker room and we danced. Like, it didn't like matter if you could dance or not. We were just bringing that energy, and I think that reflects a lot of Kalani's personality.
Anything, Alema?
Yeah, there was a few games this past season where before we had gotten ready to travel, we had like a karaoke like sing off like as a team. And so you have these guys who have horrible voices, by the way, just absolutely atrocious singing voices, singing some pretty silly songs, but those things just kind of highlight the passion and love that Kalani has, and he wants to inspire that out of his players as well. He's not perfect by any means, but it's not because of his lack of desire or passion or love for the team.
Okay, I real quick before we hit another ad here real quick, who's the best singer in terms of the coaching staff, if that makes sense? Who's got the best voice amongst the coaches? Do any of them have a good voice?
Oh man, it's hard. That's a tough one because they're all horrible, to be honest.
I think Coach Lamb was in a band, so I think he's like kind of decent.
All right. Well, I guess we'll let Coach Lamb win it. Obviously, the new head coach of Northern Colorado. He a former BYU special teams coordinator, obviously associate head coach. All right, I want to finish up and just talk a little bit about both your guys' time at BYU and just how everything played out, how you guys now perceive your career now looking back on it. We'll get to all of that here in just a moment. Real quick, a word on a good friend of ours, one of our local sponsors here, and you'll like this one, Jackson. Perry Homes. Whether you're looking for your first home, you're ready to upgrade to your dream home, Perry Homes has a house for you. For 50 years, Perry Homes has been Utah's premier home builder with communities throughout the state. They have many communities, home designs, and price points to help meet your needs. They have beautiful communities in Davis, Salt Lake, Tooele, and Utah counties, as well as multiple communities in Washington County near St. George. If you want to get down to Red Rock country, Perry Homes offers you over 50 unique home designs as well. Ramblers, 2 stories, and townhomes, and everything in between. They even have quick move-in homes available right now if you're ready to move. And the best part is they're offering generous financing incentives for their preferred lender as well. So visit PerryHomesUtah.com to see what's new in Utah's finest neighborhoods. That's PerryHomesUtah.com. For 50 years, Utah has been coming home to Perry Homes. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars a part of your day. And by the way, a big thank you to both you, Alema and Jackson, for doing this. It's fun to catch up with you. I'm hoping we can do this more often moving forward. But now, as we get close to wrapping things up here, I want to get your guys' thoughts. Obviously, when you get to BYU, and even when you commit, I guess I should say, you have stars in your eyes. You mentioned already earlier that everybody has the dream of making it to the NFL. Trust me, I had a dream of making it to play for the San Francisco 49ers. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that Niners cap hanging up on my wall. My dream growing up, I had two dreams. Either I was going to be Tiger Woods like on the PGA Tour, or I was going to play tight end for the San Francisco 49ers. I now work in sports media. But hey, you know what? I think all of us have that dream at some point. How is your perception? I'll start with you on this one, Alema. How is your perception of BYU and your time there now versus what it was when you were the 17-year-old kid who was committing to play for the Cougars?
Yeah, I think as a recruit, you hold these schools in such high regard. You think of them as like almost like these mythical places, like, oh man, like I want to go to BYU. I want to have like the college experience. I want to be able to, ultimately get married someday, make lots of money, blah, blah, all those things, and be a football star on top of that, But I think that as I got here, you start to realize kind of the reality check of, these things demand work. These things demand a lot of time and effort. You got to put those things in order to be successful in them. And along, you got to navigate some other things like politics and, some decisions that you don't necessarily agree with, and those things are not unique to just BYU. Those things are found all across the country at different schools, So I think for me, there may have been some different decisions that I would have done differently in terms of just like looking at my career, because obviously I love BYU. I love what we represent and the mission of BYU, but and I'm glad that I found my wife here as well, and that we've been able to build our life here. But in terms of just football career, like just straight X's and O's, there's some decisions I would have made differently.
Jackson, what like I said, what's your perception now looking back versus when you did commit as part of that famed Kaufusi Clan?
Yeah, I think, coming out of high school, I loved watching, Kyle Van Noy and Alani Fua, and I really wanted to be like those guys. It didn't really pan out that way for me, but I try to, live and play without any regrets. And, I had a few injuries leading up to my senior year, but I went into this year, with the attitude of like, it is what it is, and let's have a good attitude and let's give it everything we have. And so I felt like I ended my career giving everything I had, regardless of starts or tackles or playing time, whatever it was. I really felt that I had given everything. So,
real quick, Jackson, how good is your younger brother going to be in a BYU uniform, in your opinion?
oh, he's way better than me. And
Baller.
Isaiah was a really
baller.
good linebacker, really smart linebacker. I think Micah's, twice the athlete both me and Isaiah ever were. So
Now
I think he'll do really well.
Now there's another Kaufusi Ace. Is that also a cousin?
Yeah, Ace is a cousin as well. He's
They're
a
all
baller.
related, man.
Him and Micah they should have been brothers because they're talent-wise, they're similar, body type, they're similar. So I wish them the best.
Well, I'm fond of saying this, and Alema, I'll have you chime in on this. I am fond of saying, as long as there is a Kaufusi out there for the BYU football program to get, they should never lose out on.
Absolutely. Those are easy grabs just because of the legacy. And, I mean, they know what BYU brings to them, and it brings them so much more than just football. So.
Well, that's awesome. Well, hey, gentlemen, like I said, I really appreciate you guys carving out some time to hop on the podcast. It was good to have you guys on. Like I said, you have a welcome open invite anytime you want to hop on, talk anything BYU. You want to talk about a game, you want to react to something going on on social media. Would love to have you back on the show. But a big thank you to both of you. Real quick, let people know where you graduated from. And I guess also second to that, where they can find you on social media if they want to reach out.
Sure thing. Are you talking about like our degrees that we?
Yeah, your degree. Where'd you graduate in?
Sure. So I graduated in family studies from the School of Family Life, and my social medias are, let's see, on Instagram it's Alema_Pilimai. We'll also be starting a podcast soon too, just for like friends and entertainment, to talk about football, but also our experiences. So you guys stay tuned for that as well.
Jackson?
Yeah, I graduated from construction management program at BYU, and so hoping to build some houses. So let me know if you guys need houses built. But you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Kaufusi.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you once again for carving out some time. We'll do this again soon. All right.
Sweet. Thank you so much, Jake.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
There you go. Jackson Kaufusi and Alema Pilimai. Big thank you to them. And thank you to all of you for tuning in. We're going to wrap things up here. Hope you guys have a fantastic day. Make sure you follow the show on social media, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. Search out Locked On Cougars. You can find my personal Twitter feed. I'll pop up my overlay one more time. Jacob C. Hatch, if you want to check that out on Twitter as well. Until next time, thanks again for tuning in. This has been the Locked On Cougars podcast. See ya.